Hello and welcome to Creator Weekly. I'm Peggy K, and today I have updates for Twitch and Facebook, Meta in general, Bluesky, plus a few other things. And at the end, I'll look at what was happening 10 years ago this week in tech. So if you're here live, I'd love to hear what you think about this week's updates. Please say hello. As always, you can get all the links and information in this week's blog post and newsletter. There's a link in the description. So let's get started. The first thing I wanted to mention is there is a new experiment on YouTube where people can leave a voice reply to comments on their channel. This has expanded, and if you have an iOS device and you have a channel with videos and comments, check to see if you have access to this feature. You can try it out. Try it out, give feedback. Got myself distracted there. All right. So, first big thing I wanted to talk about today, and so let's start this week by talking about storage. I know that's not exciting, but specifically what you're storing in your online accounts. And so you upload videos and you do live streams and they're archived, and maybe you're like me, you don't really think about that's taking storage. But what's interesting is that this week, both Facebook and Twitch made changes to reduce the amount of videos that they will store. So as a creator, you've got to think about what you keep copies of and what you want to do with your content if it's no longer going to be saved in your favorite online platform. So let's start with Facebook. On Facebook, they said they will now only store completed live stream archives for 30 days. Not very long at all. They say that most of the views and the videos are within the first few weeks, and so 30 days should cover that. So if you have live stream archives that are older than 30 days old, those will eventually be deleted. You get 90-day notice. I'm not sure if this announcement counts as the 90-day notice or not, but you have at least 90 days to figure out what you want to do with those. You can download them all. You can export them to either Google Drive or Dropbox, or you can go into the editor and edit some shorter videos and post those as reels. So those are the options. This isn't great for pages and people and groups that do live streams of, let's say, events. I know there's a local church in my area that does Facebook Live church services or meetings, that sort of thing, and you want those to be available online as a reference. You're going to have to figure out what to do with those. Maybe upload them to YouTube if they fit policy. YouTube, for example, might be dinging videos if they have recorded music in them. So that's something that live streamers on Facebook are going to have to decide. And it's probably good to save a copy anyway. If you think you might ever want it in the future, you have more options for editing if you've downloaded and use your own video editor instead of using the Facebook Reels editor. Maybe just, post shorts on YouTube or short videos on TikTok or whatever. So that's what's happening on Facebook. And then on TikTok, that's wrong. On Twitch, they made a similar sort of announcement where Twitch is limiting the storage of highlights and uploads to 100 hours. This does not include VODs, video on demand, those are the live stream recordings, the original recordings. Those already are not saved. I think those are removed after 7 days for most users, longer if you're a partner. So, if you've been using highlights, you're going to have to figure out what to do with them. And one of the things that I didn't really appreciate is how there are a lot of communities on Twitch that use these highlights. So Twitch is saying this affects only like 0.5% of their active streamers. So if there's like 8 million active streamers, that would be like 40,000 users, which is still significant, of course, but not millions of people. And they say it's not useful for discovery and so forth. But like a lot of features, the highlights are used by a relatively small group of users, but they use it a lot. And I've read that some communities, like the speed running community, gaming, you speed run through the game, they use it a ton to have a record of their speed runs. And some Twitch streamers may have thousands of hours of highlights. And highlights are another way people are trying to get around the fact that the videos on demand are automatically removed. They were just making their archives into highlights, using it as long-term storage. That obviously can't work going forward. So for the people affected by this, it's not great. And so if you're on Twitch, your options are to download the videos, and Twitch doesn't have a bulk download option. You have to download them one by one or use a third-party tool to download them in bulk. You can also connect your YouTube channel to your Twitch account and export videos from Twitch to YouTube. There are some limits there. YouTube, of course, you have to have it verified to have longer than 15-minute videos. And YouTube does have limits to how many videos per day you can upload. They don't give you a number for that. I think it may depend on a lot of factors, but if you have tons of highlight videos on Twitch, you maybe can't export them all to YouTube at the same time. And the other option that they added is if you go into your Twitch account, on the video producer page, there's a new tracker that shows how many hours worth of highlights video you have stored. So you can see if you're close to having to remove some of them. Again, it's not great. This goes into effect in April, so people have some time to figure out what to do with their highlights archives. But a downside of exporting, downloading is that on Twitch, the highlights preserve the comments from the live chat at the same time. If you export them to YouTube, YouTube is not going to show the live comments. So it's not ideal, but it is what it is. I want to say hi to the folks in live chat. Hi, Jolyn, and hi, Craig. It's good to see you here. I'd love to hear what you think about this week's updates. If anyone else is here, please say hello. And we shall get through some interesting things today, I hope. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about is another update on Twitch. So a big change this week is that Twitch updated the way they enforce their community guidelines. Up until now, if you had a community guidelines violation, it would just stay on your Twitch account, and they kind of accumulated over time for people who have been doing this for years. So now the community guidelines violations will expire after a certain amount of time, and the amount of time depends on how severe the violation is. So a minor violation, it will expire after 90 days. Really severe violations, maybe after 2 years. So this is more in line with other platforms like YouTube and TikTok and Instagram, where if you get a community guidelines violation, it doesn't stay on your account forever, because hopefully you're learning from this, and so that if you did something stupid while you are very young, a few years later, that's not still affecting your account. Now, one of the other changes they made, though, is escalating consequences. They have this sort of gamer graphic that they provided here. The idea is this: when you have a community guidelines policy violation, there's some consequences. So, in the example, you're suspended for 1 day because you were cheating in the game. If you have a second violation of the same policy before the first violation expires, then the consequences are higher. So instead of a 1-day violation, if the next day you do it again, it's a 3-day suspension. So the idea is that if you keep doing the same things, the penalties will get higher and higher. If those penalties expire, then it basically starts from 0 again. So again, this sounds like it should maybe encourage people to follow the policies more. I'm not really big on Twitch. I watch some Twitch streams. I don't actually stream over there, so I don't have a good sense of how this might affect Vibe or anything, but it sounds like a good update. So switching over to Meta. Meta is getting ready for their community notes to launch. So just to recap, in January, they said no more third-party fact checkers. If someone gets a fact check from an expert, I don't know, it makes them feel bad or something. And instead, they're having users add community notes for clarification if a post is inaccurate, that sort of thing. And the idea is that if there is a community note that enough other people find helpful, it will show publicly. This is similar to what X does, and YouTube has experimented with it. I think some other platforms have too. Of course, there's a number of issues with the way this works. The people who write the notes, they're not experts, and there's no guarantee the note itself will be correct. And then it's a popularity contest whether it actually shows publicly or not. So that means on really contentious issues, let's say a politician posts something that is completely false, but the politician has a lot of fans, backers, any note is probably not going to rise to the level of popularity that it will show publicly. So that won't work. And it will be interesting. Of course, it's not going to be like X, where Elon gets upset that people put notes on his posts and then gets them removed. That obviously, unless Mark Zuckerberg is the same way, I guess we'll find out. So in any case, if you are in the US and at least 18 years old, and there's a couple other account requirements, you can now sign up for the waitlist to add notes on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. We'll see how that works. As you might be able to tell, I don't actually have high hopes that this is going to be particularly successful, but what do I know? I want to say hi. Hi, Andrew and Nina. Glad to see you here in the live chat. You guys too. I'd love to hear what you think about this week's updates. And then there is a sort of small update on Bluesky, and I'm mentioning it mostly because it kind of shows the philosophy over there. You can now limit the replies on your post to people you follow, and there's a bunch of options. You can also limit it to people who you follow. And so, people who follow you, people you follow, basically you're limiting the comments on a post to a smaller group, and you can decide which groups can comment on your posts. It's probably good if you have posts that go kind of viral, get a lot of comments, to manage those comments and maybe have less stupid things posted. They also added a new search option so you can search for posts on someone's profile. That makes it easier to find something a specific person posted. So that's a nice update. And now, sort of for some fun stuff. I know all of you who are watching this are on YouTube. Did you notice that there was a change in the icons? And you can kind of see in the image here, they changed the color of red of the YouTube icons. It's slightly cooler now. It used to be pure red. Now it's slightly cooler, a little pinkish, moving towards magenta. Some of the things have gradients now, and it's really interesting. There's an article from the designers of this, all the things that they took into consideration. There were accessibility issues on TVs. The pure red caused burn-in on the screens, which is bad because TV is one of the big platforms for YouTube now. And this sort of cooler, more pinkish, magenta-ish red is more modern. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing to be concerned with. I thought it was also important they have changed things so that across the platform, they're not using color to convey information. So that's the idea where, if it's red, it's one thing, it's green, it's another, but that doesn't really work for people who might be colorblind and that sort of thing. So there are interesting design things going on behind the scenes. Apparently this change went into effect maybe over the past couple months. I hadn't really noticed, although now I look at this design information and go, yeah, it does look a bit different, doesn't it? So it's kind of interesting thing to do. Again, there is a link to the entire article talking about these new design, how they chose this new color in this week's newsletter. Check the description for the link. Andrew over in the comments says, I usually don't allow comments on what I post. If I can limit it, I just want to express my opinion and don't really care that much what others think about it. Yeah, that's one way of doing it. And I think, there's different reasons to post. Maybe you just want to share your opinion. Maybe you want to have a discussion. Maybe you just want to have a discussion with people who are interesting to discuss it with. Social media is complicated. So the last thing I wanted to talk about just really quick, because there isn't that much time. Patreon published a report where they had taken a survey of both creators, about 1,000 creators and 2,000 fans, sort of, what's the state of the creatorverse kind of thing. And the focus is on how we are in a post-follower world now. And again, take this with a pinch of salt because it was paid for by Patreon, so it's obviously telling the story they want to tell. But I think it's interesting that they said one thing compared to last time they did this 5 years ago. 5 years ago, people were more concerned with getting followers, getting views, getting likes, comments, watch time. And today, the people they interviewed were more about quality and building relationships with fans and financial stability. So that kind of sounds like it's maturing a little bit. And there's a lot of discussion in this report about algorithmic feeds. And algorithms are not all bad. You can discover new things with algorithms. Algorithms hopefully help you see entertaining things that you want to see. But my feeling is that with purely algorithmic feeds, especially like on TikTok, which is sort of leading the pack on this, you don't build a relationship between the creator and the fan. So fans may see a video, they think it's awesome, but they're scrolling through a feed. So they maybe even don't even register who created it, and they don't make a connection there. And so it really feels like that's something that's missing, and that both fans and creators miss this. So Patreon declares it's the core fan era. That means in this context that there are some super fans who will watch everything that you make. And I appreciate you guys who are here every week watching my live streams. You are my core fans. And they are a different crowd than casual fans who might just scroll past and view things quickly and not even think about the creator. And the idea is that it's good to build community with your core fans. And of course, Patreon offers a way to do that, but there's other platforms that let creators do that as well. I feel like this really is a trend, not just through Patreon, but you see like on Substack, they have community building things there. Even on platforms like Discord and Reddit, and allowing creators to build a community of their top fans who then have a community with each other. I think that that's missing on a lot of platforms. We talk about social media a lot, but there's a lot less social than there used to be. So that is an interesting report. Again, it has this very interesting modern format. You should check it out. There's a link in the description. And those were the top updates for this week. Now I want to just take a look back really quickly to 2015 and see what was happening 10 years ago this week. As always, I actually make a short and a blog post that will be up later this week if you want this in more capsule form and get all the details. So, 10 years ago this week, YouTube launched YouTube Kids. And this was the first time Google specifically built something for kids with children in mind. This had parental controls, like a timer and limited search. And while there were ads on the videos, they're supposed to be approved family-friendly ads. So this was a way where kids could safely watch YouTube without the whole range of content. It's supposed to be totally kid-friendly. And at the time, YouTube said this is the first step forward, reimagining YouTube for families. Since then, this is something that YouTube has been working on. In 2018, they set up a advisory committee of experts to help advise them. And then in August 2019, they launched YouTube Kids on the web, so it was not just an app. And this also allowed parents to choose an age range. So instead of just being for kids, now parents could set it for preschool, so little ones, younger, age 5 to 7, and older, age 8 to 12. So this is all for preteens. And this allowed kids different levels of autonomy to decide what they would watch. And at the time, this was noted that they were making this change shortly before a highly anticipated settlement with the FTC. And what is that about? So in the fall of 2019, Google and YouTube paid a record $170 million fine for alleged violations of COPPA. This is a children's privacy law in the US. And this was because they said YouTube was tracking children. At the time, as part of this settlement, they didn't just pay a huge amount of money. They put new policies in place requiring creators to label any content that was specifically made for kids. And those made for kids videos have limited features, no comments, no notifications, no personalized ads. So the idea is that if kids are watching this made for kids content, they're not being tracked. And since then, they've updated the YouTube Kids app multiple times with more parental controls. And they've also put policies in place so that what they call low quality kids content is less likely to be recommended or monetized. So there's less financial incentive for just complete schlock kind of things. So this is obviously still an ongoing issue. If you follow what politicians say around the world, they're still concerned about kids watching content they shouldn't be watching and these big platforms tracking them, mostly through advertising, because they want to show personalized ads to people. Where is this going in the future? And I think an interesting thing that YouTube announced. Just last week, YouTube announced their big bets for 2025, and they announced that they would be using machine learning to estimate a user's age. It's not entirely clear to me how that will work, but that is going to be happening in the future. And that is probably better than trying to implement some sort of mandatory age verification for every single person watching YouTube videos. So that's what was happening 10 years ago this week. And, you know, my personal opinion is that a lot of this is on parents to monitor what their kids are watching online. YouTube can't do anything about a parent who allows their child to watch videos while signed into the parent's account. So that's up to them. Same on TV, you know, kids may watch things on TV that aren't appropriate for them, although I guess the TV doesn't track them. Just a comment, Andrew says in the chat, in some ways, core fandom was foreshadowed when Google Plus was around. Yes. And even before then, I talk about it in this week's newsletter. A guy named Kevin Kelly, who was one of the founders of Wired and Whole Earth Catalog, if you're old enough to remember that. Back in 2008, he talked about having 1,000 true fans, and that's what you needed to be successful. And these were people who would be willing to spend money. It's very much the same idea. You don't need millions and millions of followers. What you need is a much smaller group of core fans. So it's an old idea. Now, that's what I have for you this week. Thank you for joining me. immediately after this, there's another live stream over on the On eBoard channel. This week, it's going to be talking about branding yourself on social media. I think it will be really interesting. There'll be a redirect at the end of the video. Thank you so much for joining me this week, and I will see you all next Sunday.